Before the boy, there was the father. Before the flight, there was the fall. In an age of gods and monsters, Daedalus of Athens was a name whispered with awe. He was the greatest inventor the world had ever known, a mind that could trap lightning and give voice to stone. Before the boy, there was the father. Before the flight, there was the fall. In an age of gods and monsters, Daedalus of Athens was a name whispered with awe. He was the greatest inventor the world had ever known, a mind that could trap lightning and give voice to stone. In the heart of the gleaming kingdom of Crete, there lived a genius, Daedalus, the master inventor, the architect of wonders. For King Minos, he had built a marvel of geometry and despair, the labyrinth, a prison for the monstrous Minotaur. But the genius of his creation became his own curse. Fearing the architect would reveal the maze's secrets, the king made the entire island a prison for Daedalus and his only son, Icarus. For the father, it was a quiet torment, a life of exile. But for the son, a boy born with the soul of a bird and the heart of a lion, the island was a cage. He would stand on the highest cliffs, watching the gulls soar on the wind, his eyes burning with a single, impossible, and dangerous desire to be free. The sea was guarded by the king's ships. The land was a prison, but the sky belonged to no man. Daedalus, driven by his son's desperate yearning, conceived his most daring invention. He gathered feathers, shed by the gulls on the shore. He studied the architecture of a bird's wing. In his secret workshop, he worked tirelessly, a genius fueled by a father's love. He arranged the feathers, from the smallest to the largest, stitching them together with thread. He bound them at their base with beeswax, creating a perfect, feathered tapestry. He was not building a machine of wood or bronze. He was building a miracle of feather and wax. He was building a pair of wings, a desperate, brilliant, and fragile escape from the laws of man and nature. When the wings were complete, 2 pairs, Daedalus fitted the smaller set to his son's shoulders. Icarus trembled with excitement, his restlessness finally given a purpose. The father's lesson was simple, but his tone was grave. "Listen to me, my son," he warned, his hands firm on Icarus's shoulders. "The rules of this journey are absolute. You must fly the middle path. Fly too low, and the damp sea spray will weigh down your wings, pulling you into the waves, but fly too high. Fly too close to the sun, and its heat will melt the wax that holds your life together. Remember this, Icarus. Obey your father. Do not let your pride guide your flight." Icarus nodded, but his eyes were not on his father. They were on the endless, open sky. He heard the warning, but he did not listen to the fear in his father's voice. At dawn, they stood on the highest cliff, the wind pulling at their wings. Daedalus leaped first, a clumsy but determined beat of his wings carrying him out over the abyss. He was a creator, not a natural. Then it was Icarus's turn. He did not hesitate. With a wild, joyful cry, he threw himself from the cliff's edge. For a heart-stopping moment, he fell. Then instinct took over. He felt the wind catch in the feathers, the powerful lift, the surge of air beneath him. He was no longer a prisoner of the earth. He was a creature of the sky. The island of his birth, his lifelong cage, shrank below him. The laughter that burst from his throat was the sound of pure, unbridled freedom. He was flying. The feeling was more intoxicating, more glorious than he had ever dreamed. For a time, Icarus remembered his father's words. He followed in Daedalus's wake, maintaining a safe, steady altitude. They flew over the wind-dark sea, past the islands of Samos and Delos. They saw fishermen in their small boats, who looked up in awe and mistook them for gods. The journey was long, but their spirits were high. The sun was a warm, friendly presence on their backs. The sea was a distant, beautiful carpet below. The world was a wonder, laid out for them to see. Daedalus would look back at his son, his heart filled with a terrible, fragile hope. They were doing it. They were escaping. The middle path, the path of caution and reason, seemed to be leading them to safety. But the middle path was not in Icarus's nature. The sheer joy of it began to consume him. The endless freedom, the intoxicating power. He was no longer the son of a mortal inventor. He was a god of the air. He began to test his limits, dipping and soaring, his laughter echoing across the empty sky. The feel of the wind rushing past him, the power in his own muscles as he commanded the wings. It was a drug. His father's warnings faded, becoming a distant, cautious whisper in the roaring symphony of his own flight. Why fly in the middle when the heavens themselves were beckoning? Why crawl across the sky when he could soar? The earth and its rules, its prisons and its kings, were beneath him now. He felt invincible, he felt immortal, and he looked up, not at the horizon, but at the ultimate destination, the sun itself. Forgetting all caution, Icarus began to climb. He beat his wings with a new, powerful rhythm, leaving his father's safe, middle path far below. He rose higher and higher, a defiant speck of ambition against the vast, empty canvas of the sky. From the ground, he was a thing of beauty, but from his father's perspective, he was a horror. Daedalus watched, his heart freezing with terror. He screamed his son's name, his voice snatched away by the wind. Icarus, come back. The sun, remember the sun. But his cries were the words of the earth, and Icarus no longer belonged to the earth. He was ascending into the domain of the gods, drawn by the beautiful, golden, and utterly merciless fire of his own pride. He soared into the sun's embrace. The air grew thin and hot. The light was blinding. He felt the warmth on his skin, not as a gentle kiss, but as a burning, possessive touch. He was getting close. He had flown higher than any man, higher than any bird. In his moment of ultimate triumph, he felt the first tiny, ominous trickle of warmth on his shoulder. He ignored it, then another. He looked and saw with a flicker of confusion that the wax at the base of his wings was beginning to soften, to glisten, to turn from a solid to a liquid. The beautiful, intricate architecture of his freedom was beginning to fail. The sun, which he had seen as his prize, was not a beacon of glory. It was a furnace, and it was melting the fragile bonds of his life. Then the failure was catastrophic. A single, primary feather, its waxy bond dissolved, peeled away and fluttered into the abyss. Then another, and another. His wings, once a masterpiece of engineering, were disintegrating. He beat his arms, frantically, but he was clutching at empty air, his wings shedding their life-giving feathers in a tragic, beautiful cascade. The lift was gone. Gravity, the ancient law he had so arrogantly defied, reclaimed him with a vengeance. He began to fall, and in that long, terrifying descent, he finally saw the world from his father's perspective. He saw the beautiful, distant, and unforgiving sea rushing up to meet him. He screamed his father's name, but it was too late. He had flown too high, he had touched the sun, and now he was falling back into the cold, dark, mortal world. Daedalus, circling helplessly below, saw the shower of feathers. He saw his son, his beautiful, reckless, wonderful son, plunge into the waves, a splash, and then nothing. The sea that had once been their prison was now his son's grave. The grieving father flew on, landing on a nearby shore. He named the island Icaria, in memory of his lost child. He had given his son the gift of flight, the ultimate freedom, but he could not give him the wisdom to control it. The story of Icarus is not a story of failure. It is a timeless warning, an echo through the ages, of the terrible, beautiful, and deadly price of flying too close to the sun.